was mostly flat fee deals. Like they would settle with large, platforms for, let's say, a 2-year deal on a flat fee basis. But since then, I think they've become much more sophisticated, and they're now kind of more into formulaic rev share deals as well. But think about they're really taking advantage of the system, right? Which is the fact that they're not regulated.
Yeah. That's interesting. So as GMR is kind of taking a smart approach to top tier artists and kind of cherry picking them from ASCAP and BMI, where does, for BMI, and, they've been in the news over the last couple months of potentially being acquired. What are your thoughts on that conversation?
My own personal thoughts.
Or professionally and personally. I mean, it's an interesting, it's an interesting potential scenario to come out of this.
Yeah, let's just take a step back and sort of explain what actually happened, right? So in most people's minds, ASCAP and BMI are non-for-profit companies that run their businesses on what's called an expense ratio. So they collect money and they take a certain percentage to run the business, right? To keep the lights on, to pay their employees, to pay the rent and all that stuff. And so these publicly, available ratios are around 13-14% of their collections is used to run their business, right?
Which is pretty fair.
It's lower. It's not bad. I mean, if you think about how expensive it is to license bars and restaurants, go out there and you have to have a sales force. I mean, it actually costs money to get these licenses in place and to enforce them and to distribute. I would say it's pretty fair. But that's the general understanding, is they're non-for-profit companies.
Right.
Whatever they take in, they pay out, let's say, 86% to the songwriters and publishers. And as you know, 50% goes to the songwriters, 50% goes to the publishers directly, which is it's a little bit different from mechanical licensing, where it goes to the publishers first.
Right.
And so recently, in the last couple of years, they have announced that they want to become a for-profit company. First of all, there was kind of some rumors around them trying to get sold, right, to an investor, to a private equity company, and then those initial talks fell apart. Then they announced they're now becoming a for-profit company, which is interesting, because how can you just switch gears? But it's important to note that when they used to be a non-for-profit company, they were never set up like a 501c3 or a traditional non-for-profit company. They were always set up with a cap table, shareholders, which in this case were broadcasters, and a system where it's at their discretion, essentially, what they take as an expense ratio. They may also take some reserves. It's at their discretion, right? How they use these proceeds, and actually, frankly, how they pay out on the distribution side as well. So they were never really set up as a non-for-profit
501.
company. They just acted as one, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
That's important to know.
And I think it's also important to say, Michael, too, it's like we've got friends and partners at ASCAP and BMI. This is nothing negative about ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. I mean, they make us money. We love what they're doing, but there's an interesting macro thing that's happening that I think deserves some attention that maybe kind of gets glossed over with some of the bells and whistles and noise. So keep going. Tell me.
And so now they decided, okay, without we're for a profit company, they even announced a profit. I think it was like 150 million on like 1.5 billion in collections, so like a 10% profit margin. Nobody knows where that profit margin comes from because they still have to pay rent, and that's about the same amount of money that is kind of the expense overhead for like a year. So I'd be curious to actually see if any songwriters that are BMI affiliated have seen any differences. I think I've seen indications that they haven't, that the payouts are still going out the way they used to. So it's still TBD where that profit actually came from, but that's a different topic, right? But they're now set up as a for-profit company, meaning they can